بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والنجم إذا هوى ما ضل صاحبكم وما غوى.
According to the title of today's event, Divine Mannerism or Divine Manners, there is no religion or worldview or doctrine or way of life that stresses on mannerism more than Islam Ahlul Bayt particularly. There are extreme levels of the depths of akhlaq, adab, khuluq, with regards to how far mannerism goes in Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the man who introduced our worldview, carries with him two wonderful attributes. He calls himself the following. The first is this, that I إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم الأخلاق. I was sent out, bi'tha, being sent out on a mission. So his whole mission is the following. لِأُتَمِّمَ, itmam means to complete something that is incomplete, which is in of itself a recognition of its presence. It's not to say there is no level of mannerism pre-Islam. This denotes something very interesting, that you could have good manners as a non-Muslim. And this ties into the whole discussion on, do I need to believe in an organized religion in order to be a good person? Islam will tell you that's not the case, because Rasulullah came to complete it, not to establish it. Mannerism is already there. Polytheists had to some effect mannerism. You guys recall a lot of times that when Islam came in that 7th century Arabian Peninsula, from how backward it was, how stereotypical, biased, racist, sexist that region was, they still carried with themselves certain levels and degrees of akhlaq. For example, no one had more hospitality than the Arabs at the time. And this still is a concept found today, that the majority of the time, if you want to see the hospitality of a human being, you go to the Middle East and they are very hospitable. They might be very abrasive, but they're extremely hospitable. And I've used this example before, that if you ever want to compliment someone for what they own and you say, oh, that's a nice couch, they will feel compelled to give it to you for free. You guys know, if you know, whenever you go back and visit your family back at home or back in, the good place, the place where we all come from originally, you'll find that they're very hospitable. You compliment, mashallah, it's a very nice whatever, they will feel compelled. You know what? Take it. If you want it, you don't have to say that, just take it. So next time you're visiting your uncle or cousin in the Middle East, just compliment their TV, car, watch. They'll give you it all for free. This was also exhibited pre-Islam as well. Islam carried this concept. Not to say they didn't have a level of adab, level of etiquette. No, Islam carried the good with it from that environment, and they filtered out the bad. Rasulullah, the upright Sahaba, and later on the Imams, or during the life of the Prophet, I should say, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Now, that being said, Rasulullah carries on that explanation. I was sent to do what? To complete a recognition of the presence of akhlaq, but lacking the fruition of implementation. It was there, but not necessarily implemented properly. So if people were kind, were generous, were sweet, were good, it was only between one another. The Ajami, or the one that was a non-Arab, was second-hand citizen. And Rasulullah came to complete what they lacked. So for example, you had those who were from Africa, were not even considered human beings. They were literally considered property. Rasulullah sees that they have levels of mannerism to such a small effect, but it's there. It needs to be completed. You're nice between one another, be nice with everyone else. And so then Rasulullah would come and do what? لا فرق بين عربي وعجمي إلا بالتقوى. A hadith from the Holy Prophet of Islam. The Quran would further go to explain that we made you nations and tribes, but the purpose is not to fight, it's to get to know one another. That being said, there is a level of acknowledgement that you can be well-mannered without organized religion, because many times having decency is pretty much objective truth. You don't need someone to tell you to not be rude. No one on earth will advocate rudeness. That's not something present. Could you think of a worldview that advocates, promotes abrasiveness? That doesn't get you far in life. You don't need a religion to tell you that, or a holy book, or a prophet. So people have levels of akhlaq, but Rasulullah highlighted something beautiful. That with it, it needs to be filtered, processed properly, completed. لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Now, not just akhlaq, makarim al-akhlaq. Have you guys heard of, and inshallah read, Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq of Imam Aba Muhammad Ali ibn al-Hussein Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam? If you want to see Islam, don't go further than Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq. I have to just say it. Many people, when wanting to introduce Islam, I get it, the intention is good. They would, listen, they'd give a Quran. They immediately gift a Quran. You want to learn more about Islam? What better source than the book that came to reveal Islam? Yeah, but Habibi, if you barely read the Quran yourself, what do you expect they will get when they open chapter 9, Surah At-Tawbah, verse number 5? فَاقْتُلُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَيْثُ وَجَدْتُمُوهُمْ وَخُذُوهُمْ وَاحْصُرُوهُمْ وَاقْعُدُوا لَهُمْ كُلَّ مُرْصَدٍ. They're going to be afraid. Kill all the disbelievers wherever you find them. Where do they begin? There's no guideline. Frankly, they will be lost. And there are prerequisites to analyzing and reading the Quran. A good place to start is obviously a Quran handbook, guide, followed it with the tafasir, context, pre-Arabian circumstances needs to be understood. What was it like before I begin reading what it came to instill in what society? A good place to start would be this dua right here. Do you want to introduce Islam to someone that wants to learn more? Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq of the grandson of the Prophet of Islam. Just as good as the Prophet. Why? Because the Prophet gave the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, in our worldview, the authority and wilayah to carry on his divine message, ultimately stemming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he said what? The following. It began with the Quran. إِنَّمَا وَلِيُّكُمُ اللَّهُ, chapter 5, verse 55 in Surah Al-Ma'idah. وَرَسُولُهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ. Surely God is your guardian. وَلِيُّكُمْ. Many will come and play with this definition. It would mean God is your friend, because you don't want to give divine guardianship to the third element in this category, because that will lead you to Islam Ahlul Bayt, right? وَلِيُّكُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ, and his messenger. And those who believe, the ones who while in their state of bowing down, they're arching in prayer, gave sadaqah, gave their charity. And only one man in Islamic history was exhibited to have done this, Ali ibn Abi Talib. What will then happen by certain individuals who despise the whole entire worldview of Islam, Ahlul Bayt? They'll toy with the definition. So waliyukum becomes, surely God is your friend, and the Prophet is your friend, and Imam Ali is your friend, because no one denies that this act of history was only done by Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Okay, so we'll say it's your friend. First of all, what does it mean to say God is my friend? I've never quite understood that. There's only one man who's gotten that honorary title, and that's Prophet Abraham, Khalilullah, the friend of God. Fine. But to then say God is my friend contradicts to us the previous verse before this. In 551, God does not say friend. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء بعضهم أولياء بعض فمن يتوله منكم فإنه منه إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. O you who believe, do not take the Jews and Christians as friends. So if we said this meant friends, the Quran would be ordering us to not take Jews and Christians as friends, and that would be a problem. because the same Quran does say, take those who are Jews or Christians as the closest amongst you in mawaddah. وَلِتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى. You will find those who are closest to you in love are those who say we are Christians. In this verse it says, they are closest to me in love. In another verse it says, don't take them as friends. Contradiction. Does the Quran contradict itself? No. Therefore, the definition of wali cannot mean friend in this verse. What must it mean? Guardianship. And it adds more to that context. Do not take those of Jews or Christians as guardians, because at the time, in the Holy Prophet of Islam, the Jews and the Christians were in charge of Medina. And as a result, Muslims felt inferior, so they took them as guardians rather than taking the Holy Prophet. Therefore, the verse was revealed, do not take the Jews and Christians as authorities. Just authorities while the Holy Prophet is amongst you in the city of Medina, not as friends. Therefore, the continuation of that authority carries on. Let me just adjust my laptop. It's being very disobedient. There we are. Don't take them as authorities. Then God says, Innama, but rather take God, His Prophet, and those who believe as authorities, those who believe. Therefore, when we come and say that the work of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, who fall into that category of those who believe, the Ahlul Bayt, starting with number one, and always number one, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, then to his son, Al-Hassan, then Al-Hussein, then Ali ibn Al-Hussein, it's all substantiated from the Quran, nowhere else. The Quran is our barometer when it comes to understanding who carries that authority post the prophetic mission. Therefore, whatever work they produced has to be synchronized and in line with whatever the Holy Prophet of Islam wants. Dua makarim al-akhlaq. Islam is akhlaq. Nothing more, nothing less. Literally, what is Islam? An example is when you read this wonderful supplication from the son of Imam al-Hussein, the grandson of the Holy Prophet of Islam, that authority that the Quran highlighted would come, those who believed. The Ahlul Bayt, Muhammad and Al-Muhammad, alayhim as-salatu was-salam. It highlights wonderful attributes that a believer should aspire to attain. And it begins every single passage with a beautiful salawat. And so you will find, for example, in that wonderful supplication of the most sublime manners, makarim al-akhlaq. Makarim meaning the most sublime of mannerism. For example, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. It follows it with the next passage. Oh Allah, on that wonderful dua of the salawat, grant me a firm footing in my life to not be someone who loses their patience quickly, to make sure that I am someone who is always God conscious in the most difficult of circumstances. It is a series of just what a person wishes. It's a beautiful dialogue between the slave and the master, the human and God, and asking, Ya Allah, just make me a better person. It's a wonderful example as to what Islam came out to fulfill. Therefore, you find this wonderful attribute highlighted by Rasulullah, sent out to do what? Complete morals and conduct of the entire world today. Because obviously, we are firm believers in that the message of Rasulullah is not exclusive to the 7th century Arabian Peninsula. Because you don't need to necessarily be a Muslim to want to have high akhlaq. No. No religion in the world today says don't have mannerism. Don't be good mannered. Christianity calls for it. Judaism calls for it. Atheists will beg you, be a good human being, and furthermore, pay it forward. I remember, I don't know, you guys are from, who here? I know you live in Dearborn Heights. Am I wrong? Am I right? Yeah. On Ford Road, okay? Ford Road before Telegraph, to your right, like you're going to HFC or U of M Dearborn, there's a Tim Hortons. Am I wrong? There's a Tim Hortons, right? Anwar Habibi, help me. There's a Timmy's, okay? And it has a drive-through, right? Right? Have you gone? You don't do coffee?
It's on Michigan. You said Michigan
لا
or
Ford Road.
Telegraph and Warren. Oh,
No.
Ford Road. That's right.
No. There is that one on Telegraph and Warren, but I'm talking about the one on Ford Road. That if you keep going straight, eventually you'll hit Evergreen Road. Evergreen, yes. You don't know the one on Ford Road?
Yes, I'm aware. Yes.
You know, right? Okay, just say even if you don't make it up, so I don't look like I just wasted my time. That to me is, I remember. Listen here. I remember I pulled in. I was going to school back when school was a thing. Do you guys remember what school is? Subhanallah. I remember I was pulling in and I used to get this one drink all the time. Now that I look at it, I'm like, I used to be addicted. It wasn't the healthiest drink. It was a medium iced coffee double. Okay, double. That's not healthy. Anyways, so I remember I got on the drive-through and I'm waiting, and then it's my turn. It's so cheap, by the way. That's something that's good about Tim Hortons. It's not that expensive. And the drink was like, if I remember, it was like maybe $3. I went, it's my turn to, it's just $3, right? And then the lady looks at me and she's like, oh, don't worry, the guy ahead of you took care of it. I had so much love. I couldn't see the guy though. I asked her, I was like, who was it? Like, I don't know the name, just the person paid for your drink already. The guy right ahead of you. So I remember I could just see the car as it left, right? Because I'm just getting my drink and they had just left. So I could just barely see the car. It was like a green, ugly looking van. But ever since then, I had so much respect for every green van I saw because I couldn't see the person. So I didn't know who it was. And I'm like, who on earth would pay $3? So then the lady looks at me and she says, well, I'm like, that's nice. She thought I was going to pay for the person behind me to like pay it forward. I completely forgot. She's like, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, I'm going to take my drink and go for free. And she expected, pay it forward, man. I didn't. I felt like trash like that later that day. I'm like, oh, I should have paid it forward. That's why she was waiting for me. So the next day, as I was going to school, guess what I did? I forgot again. I didn't pay. I went again. I was waiting for my drink. I got it. And to be honest, I was actually expecting another person to pay for my drink that time. I don't know what was. Those are ayyam jahiliyyah, I call them. The days of ignorance. God dang. Anyways, I got into the habit of, if it's under $5, I'll pay for it. But sometimes you want to be careful. I tried doing that one time, not at a Tim Hortons, and I said, I'm interested to pay for the person behind me. Okay, and the lady said, she showed me their order, and I saw an alcoholic beverage. I was like, okay, never mind. You know how hard it was to tell the lady I don't feel like paying for another person's stuff after I expressed I wanted to? Well, the lady doesn't know. It's because of like a religious obligation not to provide alcohol. So she just saw this jerk. What do you mean you don't want to pay all of a sudden? And it was like maybe $10. I'm like, you know what? I forgot. I don't know. I just don't feel like paying. So, but it got me in the habit of remembering how much of a good mood that one act put me in. I wanted to spread it, but no matter how much I try, look at my luck. I couldn't really get a good opportunity. So the next time you guys see me going to Tim Hortons, the lesson from this entire talk, make sure you're right behind me. I might just pay for your thing. Just don't get alcohol. Pay it forward is something that is not even incumbent upon Islam Ahlul Bayt in particular. Non-Muslims ascribe to this. Those who don't even have a worldview of living will tell you that's a genuine, beautiful act that was just committed. People love it. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a second attribute. We mentioned two. We spoke of one. A second attribute he highlights regarding himself. You want to know Islam's stance on mannerism? Let's come look at the man who came to present it. He says, أَدَّبَنِي رَبِّي فَأَحْسَنَ تَأْدِيبِي. The most beautiful of ways to express one who received education. أَدَّبَني رَبِّي فَأَحْسَنَ تَأْدِيبِي. Let's pause. أَدَّبَني رَبِّي. Adab is a combination of multiple characteristics in Arabic. It has discipline. Adibhu, You can say that in this context, which means discipline them. And it could also mean educate, to educate someone at the same time. It can also mean to instill high akhlaq, morals, and conduct. So this word follows all of that. Now, the one who teaches these attributes has to come from a very lofty place, correct? You can't expect to teach someone if you don't have knowledge of said subject. Who better to teach Rasulullah than Allah himself? Allah, however, the usage of the word, what does he say, Rasulullah? Addabani Allah, addabani Rabbi. Now look at the parallel of the usage of words. Ar-Rab comes from the one who is a nourisher. Tarbiyah, like a father who raises his child or a mother who raises her child. What would be described as what the mother or father did? They engaged in what is referred to as tarbiyah. They raised. Rabbahu, they raised the child. So it's like Rasulullah is giving this beautiful image that I'm just a child to my Lord. And Allah is teaching me, like a parent teaches their child. Addabani. And many times, what does a teacher have to do? Or a mother or father? They have to discipline their kid. Not to say, obviously, Rasulullah was disciplined by Allah, la, but used this example to share with us that look at even the subtlety in the language he is using here, that I am not but at the service of my Lord. And I don't know anything except if it came from my Lord. And Allah would iterate this in the Holy Book, would reiterate this, that you did not know before us, and you did not write before us. أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَى وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. Did he not find you in this state, then granted you guidance? Did he not find you an orphan, then granted you solidarity and tranquility and guidance in the way that you can never have imagined? And at the end, Allah continues to highlight in this beautiful chapter of Surah Al-Duha, he highlights something gorgeous. That I will give you, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ, and he continues to use that word, رَبُّكَ, because you're talking nourisher, the one who raises, فَتَرْضَى, and I will give you until you are satisfied. That's the most powerful and beautiful of verses you will ever find regarding Rasulullah. Because the human being strives their hardest to give God until God is satisfied. But here, God says, no. I will give you until you are satisfied. What level are you on, Ya Rasulullah? Can you find another verse in the Holy Quran? God says, and I gave you. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Another verse where God said, I gave you. إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ. It means to highlight that if you want to be in a state of rida, فَتَرْضَى, to be satisfied, you need the following, Ya Rasulullah. So find every other verse that says, Inna a'tayk, or Inna Allah a'tak, or Allah gave to you, or He granted you, bestowed upon you. One is this example, and we have given you the Kawthar. And of course, Mufassirun have highlighted that this refers to Lady Fatima, salamullahi alayha, in line with the abundance of progeny. And at the same time, the progeny all goes back to one lady, Lady Fatima alayhi salam. It's as if to say, God will give you until you are satisfied. You will never be satisfied without the Ahlul Bayt near your side. And this highlights to us the closeness of Rasulullah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Rasulullah acknowledging, Addabani Rabbi fa'ahsana ta'dibi. My Lord disciplined, educated me with high good conduct. And He did it in the best way possible. فَأَحْسَنَ تَأْدِيبِ. The Quran will come and highlight, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. And you are of the most, or of sublime characteristics. The greatest of akhlaq come from Rasulullah. I would like to focus my last 5 or 8 minutes just talking about what was the conduct of Rasulullah like regarding his etiquette. This is something not spoken about often, so I really want to highlight this with your permission. Etiquette of Rasulullah spans 3 areas. His etiquette to people, his etiquette to non-human beings, and his etiquette to inanimate creations. His etiquette with people, where do we even begin? From the non-Muslim to the Muslim, from the disbeliever to the greatest believer. You will find Rasulullah's akhlaq was always on high standards when he would address them. There are companions of the Holy Prophet who entered Islam just because of Rasulullah's akhlaq. If my mind is not escaping me, Amr bin Hamaq al-Khuzai was a close companion to Rasulullah. This man entered Islam according to an opinion when he saw Rasulullah's high akhlaq. Rasulullah received him. He was from the Banu Khuza'a tribe. They came to see Rasulullah in a delegation. Amr saw Rasulullah and he was received by the Prophet in an interesting way. Rasulullah gave him a pillow to rest his back on. See, sometimes when we gather in gatherings, people like to lay behind on the wall, right? If they're not sitting on the chair. So Rasulullah wanted to give him comfort and he gave him this pillow and he's like, put this behind your back. And Rasulullah gave him his, meaning Rasulullah didn't have one afterwards. So he was without that comfort. And this man, you know, you're coming from a very racist, backwards, aggressive society. And to see that conduct is mind-blowing. To be honest, it's very mind-blowing today to see it happening. It's the most simple of gestures, right? But it speaks volumes. We could learn a lesson or two pragmatically. Literally hand someone something, an object that'll increase a person's comfort. You find someone not easy. I remember when going to the Middle East, I had a cousin who came with us to one of these gatherings that had a bunch of very tribal men gathered from Iraq. And, you know, we gathered, we hung out. This is how they chill. Some faraway place in like the farm of, I don't know, in Basra, where we're from. And you can get really intimidated by these guys sometimes. You know, they're hunters. And we're gathered and we have this friend, a cousin, who felt very like intimidated, didn't want to be there, that was outside of his comfort zone. And a simple, hey man, let's talk about something, to get his mind out of the situation at that time really changed his mood. You didn't have to do that, but we made sure to bring up about more ease to a situation that didn't look like it was easy for a poor individual that we saw. And that being said, it was not necessarily the biggest of gestures, but at the same time, it gave the kid a bit more comfort and satisfaction in that moment. And Rasulullah doing this brought this man to Islam. His akhlaq brought people to Islam. So that's one example. Akhlaq, mannerism with people. And I don't even have time to begin expanding on that. Then we said his akhlaq transcends people and it goes to the non-human, animals. Rasulullah showed us that you can have respect and akhlaq to the animal kingdom. When you look at the declaration of war in the Battle of Badr against the Quraysh, Rasulullah gave them a list of codes of conduct. One of them was, do not kill any animal. Leave the animals alone. Amongst, don't destroy a tree. Amongst, don't attack women, children, the elderly, the disabled, those who are ill, a church, a synagogue, a place of worship. A list like this, but he makes sure to add, leave the animals alone. They might be used to attack you, but they're just animals. And that's one example. You find other examples in the life of the Ahlul Bayt. If you recall, Imam Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, there's a moment where he does, in the event of Karbala, salamullahi alayh, make it to the Euphrates River when it's his turn to combat now the enemies. And he reaches the river, and if you focus on the maqtal recitation of the story that revolves around the final moments of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam, you find Imam Hussein reaching the river of the Euphrates after going days without any water. And he sees the horse wanting to drink. And Abu Abdullah records to us a moment that truly is mind-boggling. Says, you are thirsty and I am thirsty, and I won't drink until you drink. And the horse lifts its head as if it understood what the Imam was saying and avoided drinking water. Imam Hussein didn't drink until he made clear the point was made. The animal would drink first. Respect to this. And this, is not a surprise. The man is the inheritor of his grandfather, Rasulullah. Likewise, Amir al-Mu'mineen and the other Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Rasulullah with humans, Rasulullah with animals, Rasulullah with, we said one more thing, inanimate objects. Can you have respect to inanimate objects? Is that something a person can do? Have you guys heard of a worldview called Taoism? Taoism. Taoism. Taoism is a polytheistic religion in Japan. And it's still practiced today, more so back in the day. But it subscribes to a worldview called animism. Animism is the idea that everything, every object has a spirit. So, should I do something weird? I don't know, Dasani. Like this would have a spirit according to animism. My iPhone, right? I don't know, what else do I got near me? Books, the trees, everything has a what? A spirit. Is this something found in Islam, Ahlul Bayt? Not to the degree where directly everything has a soul, but rather a level of spiritual significance. What do I mean by that? Would you agree that there are places in the world more spiritual than other places? Just pieces of the earth. This land is more spiritual than that land. Is that true? Does that at least exist? For example, Manhattan, New York. How spiritual is that? How spiritual is Dearborn Heights? Compared to, let's say, for example, when you read the verse of the Holy Quran, Prophet Musa being told by Allah, فَخْلَعْ نَعْلَيْكَ إِنَّكَ فِي الْوَادِ الْمُقَدَّسِ وَادِ طُوَى. Remove your sandals or slippers. Remove your shoes. Moses, you, when he was going to receive his first revelations from Allah, remove them. Why? You are in the sanctified valley. Take off those shoes. That's almost disrespectful. This land is blessed. So an inanimate, non-living, geographic part of the world has some spiritual significance. Stones. They say that, why do we wear certain stones? And there's like an emphasis on certain stones. Like the aqiq, right, Anwar? The aqiq, the ruby, emerald, Dor al-Najaf, Sharaf al-Shams. These stones have some recommendation, Fayruzaj, the turquoise, that Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt were seen to have worn these stones. Why? They carry with them a level of spiritual significance. In that, well, the ayah in the Quran is very clear. Surah Al-Jum'ah, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ الْمَلِكِ الْقُدُّوسِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. Everything glorifies Allah. Whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, whatever, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And وَمَا is a'am, it's wide, it's not specific, it's not khas, meaning it's wide for everything. It inculcates everything, the trees, the sand, water, stones. And according to some ahadith, why these stones are emphasized more than others is because according to certain books of literature, they were amongst the first of stones to recognize and testify to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's beauty and oneness and glory. The aqiq ring, for example. And so that gives it a sense of spiritual significance. Not necessarily a soul, like certain worldviews might subscribe to, animism, for example, or even in Taoism, that, let's say a tree, a book, you have to respect it, it's watching you, it carries with it a soul. Not to that degree, but to the degree of spiritual significance. Does Rasulullah exhibit this recognition or no? Yeah, he does. Rasulullah, watch this. You want to see respect to the highest degree? It's when you start respecting things that can't talk back to you. He would give dignity to inanimate objects. His turban, his blessed imam, what the alim wears with his clerical attire, he gave it a name. He called it as-sahab. His sword, he named it. He gave it a name. He named his donkey, his horse. He would give names to inanimate objects, such that now they had a sense of reverence and dignity. That there are things in life, address it in a more befitting way than you would other things. Like you would with land, address objects of significance in that manner as well. Rasulullah teaches us this behavior in his conduct and his lifestyle. And that's why the verse is very beautiful in that regard. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. And surely you are of the highest moral standards in characteristics. لَعَلَى, the lam, Allah didn't say وَإِنَّكَ عَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. He said وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى. The lam here is called lam al-tawkeed in Arabic grammar, in Nahu wa-Sarf. Lam al-tawkeed. What does this do? It further stresses on the emphasis of the following sentence. So la'ala versus ala, lam al-tawkeed here, its placement further emphasizes the following statement. So you're not just on high moral standards, you're on the top, greatest, most significant khuluqin azim. And that cannot be closer to the truth when you witness the blessed life of Rasulullah, Habibullah, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all in attaining the light and example from the Holy Prophet of Islam to further improve our moral qualities, show the world what it truly means to be a Muslim, and to understand where our wonderful behavior, our wonderful worldview, our wonderful way of life comes from none other than Muhammad and his holy household, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam, Sayyidina Hassan.
Habibi.
Hassan, Sayyidina, thank you so much for that. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And now the floor is open. If anyone would like to ask any questions, and I guess actually I'm gonna start this off. I have a question. I was thinking about your discussion, and I was reminded you mentioned Imam, I believe Zain al-Abidin, and his dua. He also, if I'm not mistaken, has another piece of literature called Risalat al-Huquq, or Treaties, or the Treaties on Rights. Is this correct?
Of course, yeah. Risalat al-Huquq of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Another wonderful example of conduct and how you address certain people in your life. Yeah.
So I think that piece of literature, and I can link it actually in the chat for those of you who are interested. It talks of if I could just comment really quickly, it speaks of the different rights of different people in your life, and actually different, for example, organs. So the right of the stomach on you, because our body is not our body. It's just a kind of a lease until we expire from this world. So your stomach has a right on you, the right of the parent, the right of the scholar, that you should thank him when he gives a service. And we thank you, Sayyid. I got just add that in there. But the Risalat al-Huquq, I think, connects to this topic very much. So if whoever is interested, I can link it, inshallah, in the chat right now.
Ahsan. Thank you very much for sharing that. Definitely the Treaties of the Rights of Imam Zain al-Abidin is another wonderful example on morals and conduct from an Islamic perspective. But it's a bit more specific too. As you said, it provides the expected conduct and interaction with regards to a person's neighbor, a person's mother, father, child, body parts, the stomach, the hand, the feet, the ear, the eyes, the mouth, or the tongue actually. And that you recognize that your feet are to be used as forms of transportation to goodness and not to evil. Their right upon you is to never use them and take advantage of them for wrong reasons. The ear, understand it's a pathway to the heart. What you put into the ear goes straight to the heart. So put beautiful collection of rights, about 51 rights, 51 huquq that is prescribed upon every Muslim. And this is highlighted by Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam once more, as he does from Makarim al-Akhlaq. He also does again in Risalat al-Huquq. So it's a wonderful source for references regarding how we should behave and our code of conduct regarding certain elements in our lives. Ahsan, thank you for sharing that. And I think you did share it just right now, didn't you? Yeah, there you are. Alislam.org, Treaties of the Rights. Yeah. Thank you for that, Habibi. Are we open to, I guess, general Q&A? If anyone is interested to ask anything, feel free, or type anything. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Yes, inshallah, we have just a few minutes. Again, feel free to text in the chat if anyone has anything to add, any questions for the Sayyid as we're in his presence, inshallah. And if not, I actually have more questions. So maybe just one more question. There's actually a question now.
No,
If you don't
please
mind.
go ahead, man.
So I was thinking of like, so in terms of treating other people, if someone wrongs me, or if I wrong someone, actually, let's make it specific to if I say, for example, la samahullah, I backbite someone, or I speak about someone behind their back. What is my obligation at that point? Do I ask forgiveness from Allah? Do I consult that person and tell them, ask for their forgiveness as well? What are the necessary steps? I think that's an issue I've heard of, and I never really knew the answer to that. So if you can shed some light on that issue, that'd be appreciated.
If it's as simple, although I hate to describe it as simple, but if it's simply just you speaking negative behind someone's back, whether this was true, it might be called namimah. Whether it was not true information, it might be called ghiba. Nonetheless, speaking behind someone's back is a grave sin in Islam, tarnishing someone's reputation. And there are consequences. Amongst them is, in order to attain Allah's forgiveness, you have to first attempt to seek out their forgiveness, or at least express that you are remorseful over what you have committed. And so, yeah, one expectation would be literally go to them and say, listen, I hope you can forgive me. You don't have to be too specific. Sometimes it's very overwhelming. You can explain that, look, I have shortcomings towards you, and I haven't been doing you any good. So what does that mean? It means you've been doing them bad. There are ways to get around this, because if you just say, go tell them and admit and acknowledge that you spoke behind their back, that's not going to help much. And it might be overwhelming, and it carries with it huge insecurities. And so one way is somehow address them in a very positive light, acknowledge that you could be doing better in their regard, and that you might have shortcomings as well. And so expressing that fulfills that expectation, and that you recognize you did something wrong here, you're seeking their forgiveness, and you want to end the case. Because afterwards, you can then ask Allah for forgiveness. Allah expects that you right what you just wronged right here. That's in the case if the person is around. What if let me ask you a question now. What if they're not around? Say you backbit someone, and then what? And then they pass away. Or they're physically not around for you to contact them. Okay, how am I to seek Allah's forgiveness if I can't, address them? What would I have to do in this point? What's expected upon me? Any idea? Like, you want to get their forgiveness and they're no longer around.
I mean, if they're no longer around, I just would think that it's just between me and Allah.
So you lucked out now? No, there's still, there's a penalty. So what would be expected is you give charity on their behalf. Give sadaqah. You can no longer address them. Say they're no longer present, let's say, right? You give sadaqah on their behalf. You pray for them. You ask Allah to forgive them. Then you ask Allah for forgiveness. Now, there's always going to be a penalty, But look at the beauty of this penalty anyhow. The penalty is such a scary word. It is scary, right? You don't want to end up in that position. But look at the conduct here. Allah's trying to discipline us in that manner. If you can't find them to go ask them directly, then donate on their behalf, pray for them, ask God to forgive them, then you request repentance from Allah. So I do see a question here. Salamun alaikum. In terms of respecting humans, animals, plants, and inanimate objects, is there a hierarchy in rights, or does the right of a tree have equal significance to the right of a bird there? Indeed, there are, to that effect, hierarchies. I don't like necessarily to use that word in this discussion. This is better than that. But there definitely is more significance in the life of a living creature than something that is not living. And so there even is a kafara as well. Someone kills another person's property. If you look at it in the books of diya, babu diyat, in any Islamic text of jurisprudence, you find if someone accidentally had like a cow killed, they would pay this much in blood money, or a chicken that much, or a person, there even is blood money there. There's not necessarily blood money in trees, although there is in property. You would have to pay something in equal value back. So everything has its share of quantitative value when you have to pay blood money back, diya, for tarnishing or destroying something that did not belong to you, and it does have its set amount. But definitely spiritually, there are things that have a greater level of significance. Let's say, for example, a horse will have more significance spiritually. And who am I to say this? But will have more significance spiritually than an ant, right? Even though the ant in the Holy Quran communicates to Prophet Sulaiman, has that level of insight such that it sees Prophet Sulaiman approaching, goes and calls to everyone to escape. The Prophet of God is here. And then don't forget everything we mentioned the verse in Surah Al-Jum'ah, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ الْمَلِكِ الْقُدُّوسِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. So even that ant that I just described as less significant than a horse, whatever produces more back to society has a great level of significance. And therefore, you find the human beings at the top of this list, but at the same time can be at the bottom of this list. And so there is a discrepancy, not discrepancy, a difference between certain creations amongst other creations, but ultimately they all fall into the same category as, to some effect, by default, deserving of reverence, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us. Hopefully that made sense. If there are any more, I'd love to address them. Otherwise, we could wrap things up. Up to you.
Ahsan Sayyidina.
Habibi.
If no one has anything else, just to note, I did, again, just to remind you, I did link both the treaties on rights and Du'a Makarim al-Akhlaq if anyone is interested, inshallah. And we'd like to thank you all for joining us this Friday night with the respected Sayyid MohammedHassan. We appreciate all your presence, and inshallah we can benefit from more of you in the coming weeks. Thank you for your question, DA. I don't know if you're brother or sister, but thank you for participating. Inshallah, we look forward to seeing you guys. Again, we have Friday programs every night. So look out for us on Instagram at _UNI.org or on Facebook at the United Network of Islam, inshallah. And we look forward to seeing you guys. Keep up to date with social media for flyers for the next week. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Sayyid. Ahsant.
Allah, Habibi. Take care. Keep us in your du'as, inshallah.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.